My name is Lolo Puzzlo, and this is Media Delta. So, we got our quarterly fun, hey, we're doing a Retro Rank Relief pick episode of Media Delta. In this case, quarter three, the winner was, and I can't exactly remember why. I mean, I can think of one particular scene that I don't want to spoil. But there's a scene that I was thinking of when I was thinking of the picks, and it ended up winning. That being the 2010 adaptation of a Saturday Night Live sketch, MacGruber, which is calling it a parody of MacGyver is technically accurate, although
the original
sketches
were. The original
sketches were. This isn't really.
This is whatever the fuck it wants to be, baby.
This was certainly a film of all time.
It's kind of like Venture Brothers, where it started out as something and then it morphed into something else.
Yeah. This was directed by the problem is that I keep on reading the name as something else. This is by I also want to make sure that it's not okay, that is an M. Jorma Testone, I think. That's probably me mispronouncing it. He was one of the three members of the Lonely Island. So very much SNL lineage here. Stars Will Forte, Kristen Wiig's in it, Val Kilmer's in it. You got a bunch of cameos from wrestlers. Powers Booth is in it. I think that's kind of the more notable names, at least I remember. But yeah, Maya Rudolph in here.
Did you mention the villain?
Oh, Val Kilmer, yeah.
Wonderful work by Val Kilmer.
Yes. Yeah. Part of me forgets that he's in this movie, but then, yeah. I don't know how to describe this movie because this simultaneously fits two spectrums in my mind. Like, it fits in one of two spectrums in my mind. And maybe this is something we'll probably go in depth when we get into our actual discussions, but on a overall, it is an action comedy movie as to be described by Wikipedia, but it kind of fulfills two different niches. It is a very goofy movie, so it almost kind of fits that kind of ridiculous, kind of not quite as referential, but like the Hot Shots vibe of that it's just silly things are happening and there's technically a plot, but it's just goofy. And also, this movie's very much of an era. Like, you can tell that this is a 2010 movie, and I kind of forgot that you could really tell when movies of this era were made. Like, it's that late 2000s comedy movie, and I kind of forget how those movies kind of get sometimes. But yeah, just to kind of give a brief introduction to this. Also, I should probably introduce that I am not the only one who watched this movie. So please introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Axe, and I'm made of a car battery, some chewing gum, and a bit of wire.
Hi, I'm Torpid, and I'm here to play the part of Will Forte's ass.
Yes. With or without celery?
Yes.
Yeah, so we watched this movie. So I'll get more into it, but this is certainly a movie that I was not expecting going into it. Yeah, this is definitely a movie that people probably go more into it, but yeah, this is definitely a movie that is interesting, quote unquote, upon first watching. So, before I actually get into your two's little one-on-ones, let me kind of go ahead and give my brief spiel about this movie. So I had seen this movie once before. It's funny because I listened to a lot of Giant Bomb, and this is a movie that was kind of a running joke among Dan Reichert, who is a personality on there, really singing the praises of this movie. So I've always heard of this movie, but never actually watched it until one day me and some friends were like, hey, there's this movie, here's a movie that we could watch. We could just watch MacGruber. And we did. And it was certainly an experience. this movie, as I said, it's very much, you can tell the era that it was made. Just the kind of like the referential joke, you can tell it's in a very much a like post Bush years kind of thing, where it is very much still like that era of like post 9/11 kind of thing of like there's just a feel to it that you can definitely tell that era. It's like maybe towards the end of it. Some of the jokes definitely go on the more raunchy, edgy side. And it's this is certainly a movie. I kind of like there's some parts that are actually legitimately funny, but a lot of it is just very crude. The parts I think that really hit do really hit, but there's a lot of parts that I feel like they're just kind of making him an asshole just to kind of like as a joke. So if that's not your kind of thing, this is probably not going to be for you. There's something about it that, especially like compared to like a Hot Shots or like even an Airplane, that I feel like those movies kind of like I feel like those movies hit with the jokes a little bit better. Like it almost feels like it's trying to be a little bit too much of an action, like trying to be coherent plot than Hot Shots, where it was like it knows it's a comedy. But this definitely still, I think, is fine. There is definitely some very interesting visual gags. I was not expecting to see as much nude Will Forte. That's not what I was expecting going into this movie, but that's what you get. And just there's some kind of meandering, but it's like this is definitely film. There's some good laughs in it, but also there is definitely some age in this. There is some unfortunate. I actually had to correct the Does the Dog Die for this. If you were not familiar with the, I think I've mentioned it on this website or on this podcast a few times. The website Does the Dog Die, which is a good website if you want to, if there are certain things that bother you about, if they show up in movies. For example, I use it because, as I've mentioned, I am an emetophobic, so I do not like vomiting. I do not like seeing it. It gives me massive anxiety. So I use that to know if a movie's going to have that in it, and that's where you can do that. And unfortunately, this movie, as it is this era, has some slight ableist slurs in it. Well, namely, there is one hard R in this one, which that site didn't have, and I had to correct it myself. So that's a little bit of a warning there. That is a bit unfortunate error. I would say of the times, that actually wasn't that far long ago. That was 12 years ago. I could have seen this movie in theaters, and I just didn't because, it wasn't my thing. Acting's all right. I think a lot of this stuff is all right outside the jokes, which can be either extremely funny or just kind of meh. It's weird because it's like the highs are really high, but the lows just kind of, for the most part, it's kind of okay. So yeah, that's kind of my general thought on this. This was actually very hard for me to come up with a ranking. So I'm honestly, it's like I think it's all right. Like I don't think it's bad, but it's like there's some particular bits that I think are funny, but the rest of it, I think it's okay. So my particular range for this ranking wise is actually going to go from 7 to 12. Because I think it's for the most part good. I can be persuaded to say that it's actually more than just kind of good to being slightly below average. So that's my personal take on this movie. So with that being said, I need to remember where my thing is so I can get Accent and we can talk to them about what they thought about MacGruber 2010 action comedy. Hello.
Ow.
So, you, before this, had you seen either this movie or the sketches?
No, I'm not a big SNL fan.
Had you seen MacGyver at all?
I've seen bits of MacGyver, and I kind of get the idea.
Okay, so kind of get what it's kind of going for. So, with that being said, since you've not seen this before, what's your first impressions of this movie, and what do you think of this movie?
So, usually when we do these things, I kind of let slip what I'm feeling and thinking. For this one, I kind of kept quiet. mostly because the two of you loved it. And it ran off me like rain on a waterproof whatever. I didn't find most of it funny. I mean, Will Forte's not a bad comic, and he's not a bad actor. It's just, I don't know, the character of MacGruber is such an unlikable asshole that it was really hard for me to root for him for anything. And it didn't feel like he got enough comeuppance for his behavior, if any at all, to kind of like offset how goddamn obnoxious he was.
Yeah, I can. That is one thing that I was like, man, yeah, like it is definitely a thing that some people have tolerance for that, but yeah, it is fully understandable. Like, especially as I kind of watch them again, I'm like, after watching this a second time, it's like, like there's still some funny bits in it, but also for the most part, it's like,
I'm pretty sure because my brain is fried today, but I did chuckle at a couple of moments, but like a good portion of it was just me going, really? Like the was it a leak or was it a celery?
Oh yes, the shoving the celery up the ass. Yes.
Yeah, walking around with the celery in the like that. It did nothing for me. A lot of I'm trying to remember because I guess I just didn't like it enough that I actually can't do my usual very descriptive retelling of what I saw. As far as like the story writing goes, it was consistent and there was an interesting story there, but I feel it was just marred by a style of comedy that is unfortunately not my kind of. It's not what makes me laugh.
Actually, there was something about this because actually that comment, or thinking of the celery bit, it actually reminded me of, because it's like trying to think of like, oh, that probably, like, especially of that time, it's like probably just going on the fact that he's naked as the joke of it, and it's like, when was Forgetting Sarah Marshall? When did that come out? That was 2008, so that's relatively in that same period. Which the thing I just know about that movie is, you see a dick in it.
Yeah. But that even Forgetting Sarah Marshall, that's a brand of comedy that does not work for me. It's in a way a little bit frattish.
Yeah. Yes. That actually, MacGruber kind of, like, it's in that ballpark, I think.
It could have been a National Lampoon movie. It really could have.
Yeah.
And just like, I don't feel like it resolves itself too well either. I did not feel satisfied having watched the movie. And that was one of the big reasons why I didn't say anything. Cause again, I see other people having fun. I don't want to put a damper on that shit. Be like, oh, really? So, I can see how other people might enjoy it. Like a good portion of Adam Sandler's films. Cause as I've said many times, I hate Adam Sandler and his comedy, but this is kind of in that same boat, but not quite as much because there's still something to it. Like, I don't think the whole thing was obnoxious. It's just one of those, it's not for me things. Whereas with those other ones, it's like, oh no, this sucks. I can't stand it. But yeah.
Yeah, because the thing that I was thinking, and maybe this might be, that it is an action comedy. So there is an action bit component to it as well as a comedy component. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it kind of almost feels like some movies can gel that together mainly by trying to focus on one or the other, and it almost feels like this tries to do it right in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's what you were also kind of getting from that.
Kinda. Like, I actually just thought of two things on the two sides of stuff. So, like, an example of the stuff that really bugged me, other than the thing up the ass, was when MacGruber is brought in for this mission. He's introduced to private, a corporal.
I completely forgot what that guy's name was.
But yeah, that's the other thing too. Cast is mostly forgettable, but
Lieutenant Dixon Piper is the actual competent one.
Right, so he's introduced to Piper and immediately just basically tells him to go fuck himself for no reason, with no real driving point behind it. Just it's an accentuation of just how unlikable and awful MacGruber is. And a good parallel could be considered Archer from the show Archer. He is an asshole, and he is in a lot of ways unlikable. But they balance that out with a number of things that make him kind of likable, and they sort of those two aspects of him clash, and that drives a part of the comedy and the drama. But with MacGruber, there's literally nothing opposing that. Like even Piper, who's supposed to be sort of the straight man to things, doesn't manage to do anything to sort of butt up properly against MacGruber's terribleness, and I think that's a big part of why it didn't work for me. But there was the good moment was just sort of right after that scene I mentioned, when MacGruber goes and he collects all of these really, important people that he knows, and they're all professional wrestlers, outside of the movie. And you think, okay, we're going to get this movie with a bunch of professional wrestlers that might get interesting. And then he accidentally blows them up and they all die. Like that was funny. That was funny and very unexpected.
Like, there is a number of, like, when this movie gets it, I think it really gets it. The problem is that those moments are very few and far between.
They are, and that was what was disappointing. I was expecting a little more. I don't know. In a way, I was almost kind of expecting a little more of Zoolander out of it. Like that's the vibe I sort of got off of some of the stuff I had read about it and saw about it, and I thought it was going to be a little more on that side of the wacky versus, I guess it's very much a very SNL film, because that's the kind of humor you usually get off of, NSL nowadays, versus stuff like Blues Brothers. Blues Brothers was a fantastic comedy that does a really great job of adapting a bunch of skits into a full-fledged film. And then you have Night at the Roxbury.
Yeah, because it's God, those movies are what? Like, you get, like, maybe a 25% chance of them actually being good, because it's what? You got the Blues Brothers, you got, like, I feel like there has to be another one that's based off of an SNL sketch that was actually decent.
There was Blues Brothers, I had just said it, and now it's left my mind.
Night at the Roxbury. I have not seen that one. I know that one is a little divisive, but, or at least
Wayne's World.
Wayne's World. Yes, Wayne's World.
Those are like the three I can think of off my head. But Blues Brothers and Wayne's World were for good films, and then Night at the Roxbury was Night at the Roxbury. So I feel like this unfortunately fell into that pit with the other ones where it didn't work for me.
Yeah, because you got stuff like Coneheads. You got stuff like well, I forgot that there was Wayne. I don't even know what Bob Roberts is.
Oh God! And I just remembered that they did a movie about It's Pat.
Yes, there's It's Pat. Stuart Saves His Family. The Ladies' Man.
Oh God, The Ladies' Man. That
there's also technically Blues Brothers 2000, but maybe not Best Left Behind.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. But no, like this is unfortunately I think one of the ones that falls under the didn't quite make it category. Oh God, Superstar. Why would you remind me that Superstar exists?
Yeah.
Peanut Gallery. God damn it. Yeah. I don't know if I'd say it's as bad as those ones, but it's not up to the standard, I think, of the better ones.
Yeah.
I think that's really the most I have to say about it.
For the record, looking, because I have a list of Saturday Night Live movies that's ranked by, I have it sorted by Rotten Tomato score. This is the fourth of 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11 SNL movies at 48%. The ones that are above it are Wayne's World 2, The Blues Brothers, and Wayne's World. Everything else is below 48%.
I mean, that tracks.
Having 0%.
I'm glad. I think it should have a negative score. In fact, I think it should be erased from this reality. But that's a different discussion altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it falls for with me.
All right. So I guess we don't really have much else. What is your kind of ranking scale for this one?
Well, based on what I said, obviously I didn't enjoy the film, but that's not the only way I can really judge a movie. I mean, if there's nothing about the movie that's salvageable, like Doom, I just go right down to the bottom. But I'm also kind of trying to learn from each of these sessions and to be a little less reactionary and a little more balanced in how I approach these. So, I mean, obviously my gut says 18, but if I were to approach this with my new way of thinking, I would probably put this around like 12 or 13.
12, 13?
Yeah.
Okie doke. Well, if that being said, let's go ahead and see what Torpo has to say about this movie. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so you had seen this movie before, and also you're familiar with the SNL sketches?
Yeah, I actually quite enjoyed them.
All right. So with that in mind, what is your thoughts on MacGruber the movie?
So first off, it's really weird because it's such a huge departure from the sketches, but it's not surprising because the sketches were only a couple minutes long usually. And just a joke on, hey, MacGruber, get us out of this situation, and MacGruber fumbling and everyone dying.
Yeah.
So it actually does pay off in that regard once.
Yeah, there is one scene.
One single scene where they actually abide by the formula.
Yeah. So what do you think of this movie?
It's a strange film, and I'm still never quite. I like it. I enjoy watching it, but MacGruber fucking sucks.
Yes.
MacGruber sucks so much, and that's the point of the film, and a big part of it. But also, holy shit, he sucks.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing where it's like, yeah, you can make like a shitty protagonist. Like you've been doing that since the dawn time in terms of like this kind of stuff. This it doesn't really feel like he gets like a come up, like a lot of like when you have like a shitty character, either there is something charming about them or they get some sort of comeuppance, like trying to think of like Archer, for example, was something that was brought up when we were talking about Axe. That actually the kind of thinking about that, the thing with Archer is that he gets like, there's the kind of things where it's like he's an asshole, but also not only does he get to be like the butt of the joke a lot of times, also like there's a lot of people that is like, oh hey, you messed this up because of your actions.
But he's also good at his job.
He's also good at his job, which MacGruber is not.
So that's the problem, is MacGruber is, but at very select things, and those don't matter until late in the film.
Yeah. It's like they're succeeding in spite of him instead of like because of him.
Because like early on they mention his ability to rip throats, and lo and behold, later in the movie, even though it could have been relevant earlier, he's really good at ripping throats.
Yeah.
But he's very much a one step forward, two steps back character, and keeps leaning into that. Like, I don't know. I enjoy the movie. It's very funny. There's a lot of really good jokes, but also, man, MacGruber sucks.
Yeah.
And that's part of the joke and leans into some of the jokes, but also, man, he sucks. Like, I like the idea of him being super paranoid about the sound system in his car, so he always removes it before going anywhere.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing is, like, I was thinking, more I would think about it, it's like, yeah, there are some really good jokes in this movie. There are some really funny jokes in this movie, but they're kind of few and far between. Like, there are hot spots in the movie where, hey, this part's funny. And then there's not like parts where it's like, oh, this is just kind of normal. Like, what if you were to say 2000 or like 2010s era SNL comedy, you'd say that.
It also doesn't help that like it is a movie where a lot of the jokes really work if you don't know what you're getting into.
Yes.
It relies a lot on surprise and a little bit on subversion.
There's also a lot of it, the more like rewatching it, especially, there's always a like thinking about this era of comedy, like there's something about the late 2000s, just that style of comedy in those movies. Just you can really date when these movies were made.
Yeah.
And this feels like it's at the tail end of that. But you can really tell it's of an era. Namely through, let's just say, some subject matter of some jokes.
In particular, there's a slur dropped, yes.
There's a slur dropped. Also, another thing that's kind of not as, it's kind of not, you have to kind of notice it. There's also a bit of homophobia in there
Yeah.
because when he's building up the team, he is like going to all the people that he used to work with, and then one of them has a partner that's a guy, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna scratch him off the list."
See, my problem is you could read it that way. You could also read it as, oh, he's got someone he's with, unlike all these other guys.
That is, you could also read that. The thing is also that,
Which is why he appears at the wedding at the end with his partner.
Oh, right, he does.
Yeah. So
Oh, I
like,
didn't
there was
even
no real
notice that.
malice in it.
Okay, in that case, then I take that back.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. He's at the wedding. He's also the one who catches the bouquet, actually.
Oh, okay, never mind then. That is okay. That is something that It seems like that. It's also just because it feels like that's this
It
era.
feels
of
like
movie.
that. Yes, I get that.
Okay.
It's a bit hard to read at first up until the end.
Okay.
It's a strange movie though. It's a really strange movie.
Yeah.
I will say this: Will Forte does an incredible job. Also, his ass is out a surprising amount of the film.
He is naked a lot of this movie.
Like MacGruber wouldn't nearly be as good if it wasn't him, basically.
Yeah. Yes.
His ass is out so much.
His ass is out, and it's got a piece of celery in it a lot of the time. Well,
Only
some
like
of the
one
times.
time.
Yeah. Well, 2 times, I think.
No, the other guy does the second time.
Okay, yes.
It's supposed to be like, yes, a big solidarity moment.
God, this is such a weird movie. And also Val Kilmer's in it. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that, like, Val Kilmer, that is not a great part of, like, his career kind of was going down from that point. But, I still feel like that was kind of, or maybe that was, like, the one big name they can get. Powers Booth is also in it, and I know he's, like, a big character actor, but also he's a character actor. But God. Also, I just think it's funny with Val Kilmer. Like, it is strangely ironic for a movie about him to be the villain in a movie where the protagonist rips out throats, knowing what happened to Val Kilmer not that shortly after this movie.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
That is nothing that this movie could, like, there's nothing that they could do about that, but also that is weirdly dark.
To be fair, he doesn't get his throat ripped out.
He does not. He gets his penis blown off.
Among other things.
Yes.
The ending of this film is exceptional.
Yes. Which there are some things I don't want to spoil because that's part of the joke and that's actually very funny. But that one I feel like it's one of the multitudes of, hey, this, like, they're going for a joke and it's okay, but also.
No, there's some pretty good jokes. Like, the things that really stick with me are him and his ex-wife, the van, which is incredible and probably one of the strongest jokes in the film.
Uh-huh.
And in the ending.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I guess go ahead.
I enjoy it though, and I really feel like while the writing isn't strong, the cast helps carry it, if nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess in that case, what number were you thinking of ranking this?
Let's see. What would I think of putting this at?
It's a bit weird because we don't have a whole lot of comedies.
Yeah, I'm just like trying to think. I guess I don't know really. Like,
this is kind of hard to rank.
Yeah, like if anything I could think of is just like a range, but it's like a wide range because I'm not 100% sure. Because I like it, I find it funny, but also it has problems in the highs, while quite high are rare.
Yeah.
And it's got a few funny running jokes too, like as I said, the sound system. The celery thing was a nice little dumb payoff, but
yeah,
it's one of those things like I'm not sure.
Well, if you want to give a range, that's also perfectly fine.
Problem is, it's a wide ass range. It's like 6 to 9.
All right, it's
not to be confused with the ranking.
Yes, yeah, it is not a 69. It is a 629. Which, yeah, okay. Well, I guess with that, let's go ahead and bring Max in, and we can have a nice little group discussion. Although, I think actually, this discussion, because I feel like, actually, I feel like there is some common ground, though, in 2 different ways of approaching it. So, now that we're all together, we can let's go over some of the things as a group. Although, weirdly enough, both of you kind of come across same things, although I think slightly different takes on it, although maybe not actually that different. So let's kind of go over these bullet points. Storytelling, characters, plot, themes, dialogue, etc. MacGruber sucks is general consensus.
It's miserable.
It's the point, but also, man, it gets fucking rough.
Yes. The plot exists. Like,
I forgot what it was.
it's basically Val Kilmer's character is trying to use a nuke to blow up the State of the Union. Like, it doesn't matter, to be honest.
It's an Insidious plot.
Yeah. The writing in it is okay.
It varies widely.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
It's just because like the movie sits in a place where we've watched it. We watched it 2 days ago, and it's very hard to pick up specific things because a lot of it is, in my opinion, forgettable.
See, for me, it's not that. It's very much not that. It's just the problem is, like, I think there's some really good jokes, but there's also like a lot of little jokes in between that aren't necessarily funny.
Yeah. It is. Yes. The problem is some of those other jokes aren't as funny because, like, I feel like if you just did the jokes on its own, I don't feel like it would work as well. But then when you have the build up, it's actually kind of enhanced it a little bit. Although I feel like having it so that you have, like, doing like a joke after joke after joke that are just kind of okay. I don't feel like getting a big payoff off of, oh, this isn't actually funny. There's something about that I feel kind of like it's kind of a little almost lessens it a little bit. Yeah, it's just.
Well, when we discussed it, the point was brought up, and I brought up one of the bits that I can remember that I thought was funny, and that's at the start of the film when MacGruber picks 4 or 5 different people to be on his team, and they're all professional wrestlers, and then you get Paul White doing a little smoochy bit. Like the whole lead up to the punchline of that particular joke is very good. And then once he's finally assembled the team, he accidentally blows them all up and they all die. And that's such a really good way to build up a potential interesting thing and then just utterly burn it down, but in a way that is satisfying and funny.
Yes. That is a very good bit. It's also great because it's like just hearing that is like, oh, it's like, I guess it's going to happen. But there's something just about the reaction that is just very good.
Will Forte fucking sells the shit out of it.
He does. But like, I just like that idea that it felt like it was setting us up for a very specific thing to have this movie with all these wrestlers. And I was all on board. I was like, okay, we're going to have some pro wrestlers doing some movie stuff. I'm great. And then they all die. I'm like, are you like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah.
It's a good subversion of expectation. And I just wish more of the movie was like that.
Yeah.
See, I was mentioning, actually, I feel like it is a movie that holds up better on first viewing because you don't know what to expect.
Yes.
A lot of the big jokes are subversions of what you're supposed to expect. But then, like, the second time through, some of them are still really good. Others kind of lose effect, though, like the celery thing.
Yes.
Yeah, that one didn't work for me at all.
Yeah, that is very much a joke that is like, hey, if you like a particular type of humor, it's kind of funny. But also, yeah.
I'm disappointed it didn't do more MacGyver stuff. We only get the bit at the very end of the film. Like, I was hoping to see a little bit more of that.
Yeah, that's like, I kind of feel like they should have at least had that happen like 1 or 2 more times.
Absolutely.
Well, especially because like a big part of the SNL sketches was him trying to do it and then failing and everyone dies.
Yeah, which I understand if you do that, that's kind of hard to repeatedly do that in a movie format, but I kind of feel like having him screw up doing like some other build would be also funny.
I mean, they could have set it up for a situation that led into it. Like, I don't know, say they get locked in a warehouse and he tries to create a lock picking device and ends up accidentally burning the warehouse down. And then you could go and do maybe like 20 or 30 minutes later, another type of thing where, you know, maybe they've got to open something and instead of opening it, he blows it up. like I know those are kind of similar, but like those are just examples of other stuff you could have put in the film to kind of give it a little like you said, only like 3-4 times. Like you don't have to do it every other minute, but like having 3 or 4 solid moments of him failing to MacGyver, I think would really have sold more on what the original intent of this was, as I've been told.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more like they took the angle of MacGruber sucks at what he does and just ran with that. So I still think the payoff for the very end was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the main problem with at least the storytelling is it just like kind of meanders a bit, and also the jokes are like they peak and then it's another kind of like it's very much, hey, it has good peaks, but also a lot of valleys.
It doesn't help that like a lot of the plot is mostly just MacGruber failing to do anything and making things worse and harder for everyone.
Yeah, and it's not like it's not like he fucks up in a specific kind of way, you know what I mean? Like it's more just like, oh, well, they just got away with it. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't sort of like, it's not like a pratfall with him. It's just more like a Butterfingers kind of thing. Where it's like, well, he just ran off with the thing. How? Because MacGruber was too busy yelling at a wall. Like instead of maybe it fell and one of his goons was down there to catch it and he ran away with it. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot more just, well, oopsie doopsie, they got away.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of think, yeah.
And a lot of it's a natural consequence of who he is, but yeah, ultimately it's frustrating.
Yeah. Kind of moving on to aesthetic. I like art, music, set design. It's like they're okay.
It exists.
I barely remember the soundtrack of this movie because I think a lot of it is just the music that plays in his radio.
Yep.
It's like it exists. That's not what the point of the movie is.
I mean, the opening theme's all right, but yeah, there's nothing really in the way of music or whatever, and the set design exists mostly as a means to an end.
Yeah, and I think. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, kind of looking at it because the other 2 bullet points are performance, which we kind of already like. The performance is the dialogue in the like. We've kind of gone over. Will Forte did like good stuff, but overall, I think the performance really ties into the jokes, and I think we've kind of gone over that bit. And how long is this? Like, this movie isn't too terribly long, so I think
an hour and a half.
Yeah, it is an hour and a half directly, and I think it kind of uses its time all right.
As good as it can, really.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any cruft in it, and it just like the flow seemed like it flowed all right.
Yeah, it worked fine.
Yeah.
So I think if there's like main issues with the thing, it's just that the jokes just kind of didn't land right. A lot of it is sometimes like there are some good jokes.
Well, it's like you said during my bit was, when it gets it, it gets it, but when it doesn't, it really doesn't.
Yeah. Did anyone else have any like points they wanted to make? So I think we kind of ran the gamut for this movie already.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I think I've worn it out.
All right. There's really isn't that much trivia about this movie. Apparently there is a sequel to this in development, but who knows if that's actually going to go anywhere. There's also a show based off of it. I have no idea how good it was because I don't subscribe to Peacock, so I can't see it. But yeah, I think that means we can probably go on to ranking this one. So we're going to rank this using our normal 1 to 21 scale, 1 being absolute mastercraft, can't really get much better than what it is. It's 21, which is very painful to watch, even ironically. This is a tough one to put on the board. So just to, like, overall, it looks like we're going to keep it in the middle, just to kind of go over the rankings. So I'll say, Ax, you said you were not particularly... didn't particularly care for this movie, but kind of looking at it where you can kind of figure out, like, you can kind of see that some people like it. You were thinking in the 12-13 range. Torpo, you like it, but you can understand the flaws of it. You were thinking the 6 to 9 range. Me, on the other hand, could not think of anything at all. Went for the range of 7 to 12. So
Interesting.
It's a 10 to me.
that is, I'm pretty certain with averaging it. God, how do I like that is that is pretty much like that's right. Let's just start right in the middle and go from there. At 11 we have A Boy Named Charlie Brown, Appleseed, 1988, and Little Nemo Adventures in Dreamland.
I would watch this over any of those.
10, I'll just go over 10 and 12. 10, we have the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure anime or OVA. We have Nickelodeon Guts, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Wizardry.
You know what? I could
12,
put this on par with Scott Pilgrim, actually.
Yeah.
That's actually, I was about to say that. But just to also say, at 12, we have Street Fighter, the 1994 movie, 1990's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Ultraman, The Adventure Begins. That's Scott Pilgrim, right there, 2010 movie. Again, very much you could tell that it was from an era, even though it's a different style of writer. Scott Pilgrim has some also very similar issues.
Yeah, slightly different genre, but still a case of main character sucks. Main character's supposed to suck. It's part of the plot. But boy, howdy do they fucking suck.
God, actually, so here's the thing with Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim has some interesting action scenes and also has some really good music in it. It has some things about it. So if you had to ask me, would I rather watch Scott Pilgrim versus the World versus MacGruber? The thing is, I know that the jokes are coming in MacGruber, but there's at least some interesting action stuff in Scott Pilgrim. That being said, it is also Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, that's why I think they're fine at the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hit this point while we're thinking of it. Let's see, things to call out. Let's see. There is that one unfortunate drop. Okay, so it is Y, which thankfully we do not have to bring out that often for the content warning of problematic or discriminatory elements, which is the best thing I have for the accidental dropping of a slur. Well, not accidental, but yeah.
So it was tasty.
Kind of forgot about that. And as I said in my little bit, I personally went and corrected Does the Dog Die because of that.
Yeah, I'm shocked that wasn't on there, and I find it hilarious that you had to correct it. It's
actually funny because there is a straight up a thing. I'll actually go on there to read off the exact description of it. Which actually, as of after they made this, and I think it's actually a very recent addition, weirdly enough, considering the other things they have on there. It is, because I can look for my comment that I left on it. Is there ableist language or behavior? Someone put no, but they had one vote. So I think one person went through and just said, and then I corrected it, so there is no things. They do now have a tag on here that is their use of, what is the actual phrasing of it?
Yeah, for those who don't know about the viewing experience with Lolo, this is nothing against him, but Lolo really likes to look up Does the Dog Die, as well as a bunch of IMDb shit while watching.
Well, it's mostly Does the Dog Die for if I need to know of certain things. There is a thing, actually.
Just, I've seen you actively spoil yourself on films while watching.
Yeah. Well, it's more for trivia and that stuff.
Don't be like me, where I show a film without any idea of what it is and then get very upset when it's got some really bad shit in it.
Yes, there is now a tag, or I don't know if tag's the right word. There's now a thing that is the R word used, and yes, I did label that.
Very much was.
I will always love I want to ask them, like, send them an email and say, why is there one that is specifically, does someone fart or spit? That is one thing. They're not separate.
That's one. Okay, it's one thing. Yeah, that
I can understand. Weird. Does someone fart, and an additional one? Does someone spit? Those are perfectly understandable as things that might be triggering to someone. Why they are one things together, I don't know. Like some of these and also together makes sense. Like, does someone wet or soil themselves? That one kind of makes sense. But yes, yeah. Again, I can't really think of anything else to put for content. Because we want to put sexuality for the gratuitous whale noodles.
Sex scenes. Also,
Not
a
even
lot
the
of ass.
sex scenes,
There's
also-
so much ass.
That's right. That's the. I was thinking. I knew there was something that the sex scenes weren't funny to me. It's just him yelling, and
Yeah,
it's like
I found them
can't-
funny, but
I know. I
it's-
know.
yeah.
I was just sitting there like, this is making me so annoyed.
Yeah, I can understand it, but if you're, yes, it is.
it's a taste thing.
Humor is
Yeah.
subjective.
Yeah.
Actually, looking up the list, there's more whys than I thought about. Anyway, yeah. Is there anything we want to call out? Well, in music, music, charmed cinematography, storytelling, action, and art. I don't really think so.
No, I got nothing.
I don't even think a yay or nay because it's like this movie kind of existed.
I would say for yay length because it didn't out. It wasn't great, but it didn't outstay its welcome. Like it could have gone on a little longer, and been like torturous, but it knew when to finally just bring it to an end.
There is something to say about something that is like, hey, this is probably exactly as long as it needs to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, and actually, nay. Oh great, yeah. Now that the emotes or the emoji are different in Windows 11, what is the actual? If I go to my charms list. Oh, it's the X face. Okay, boy, this was made in the XDs, wasn't it? Because this was definitely a late 2000s movie. Do we have that for Scott Pilgrim? Okay, yes, we do. All right. Yeah, I think that's good for MacGruber. Certainly interesting to watch it again, but yeah, it is definitely a movie that on second watching, you don't want to watch that movie too many times. But anyway, with that, Axe, is there anything you want to plug?
Yes, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and your local SPCA or animal shelter. Please adopt, don't shop.
And Torpo.
Twitch.tv/torpentypist and @torpentypist on Twitter. And I would like to, I really actually wouldn't like to plug the whole Spoon and Val Kilmer.
Yeah. So next up, we have an interesting thing because actually, I've not actually publicly disclosed what actually I have, but I have not actually officially said what the next thing is yet. So with this being the thing for November, we need one more slot. And I happen to be looking at, like, okay, what's an interesting pairing for this? Now, I happen to be thinking of another, like, I was thinking of something that was, like, a good foil for this movie. So I was thinking, like, some of the more notable, like, drama or, like, action, or, like, kind of the more, let's just say, I don't want to say serious, but some of the more, like, they have a topic, or there's something about that's a lot more, like, actually serious. And it just happened to be a bunch of movies from before 1980. And the one that ended up winning, so the way I do polls on my Discord is I give I either give, here's some emojis, or I try and be a little bit vague to kind of make it more fun to like, hey, I'm not going to say, here's this movie, and just vote on it. I like to make it a little bit more interesting. So the four choices that we had were a lot of people's lives get turned upside down. A handful of people die from being horny. And in the future, sports ball is life and death. Those are the ones that didn't win. What ended up winning was a vigilante deals with villains causing chaos in the city. And that is what we're going to be watching. So we're going to be watching the 1966 Batman the movie, which in hindsight, that actually is not a foil for this. It's a kind of actually a similar thing, but in a different era. And also it's interesting because I don't think I've actually seen the 1966 Batman. So that'll be fun. And yes. Anyway, with that, that is going to do it for this episode. So thank you all for listening.
Bye.
If you would like to see the list in which we have ranked every single thing we've done for Media Delta, you can go to r3.ldp.life in your browser. If you would like to watch the sister show that determines what could show up on Media Delta, that's Retro Rank Rhapsody, you can watch it live on Twitch at twitch.tv/LoloToPuzzlo or on YouTube at youtube.ldp.life. If you would like to discuss this episode with others, please join our Discord server by going to discord.ldp.life in your browser, which should give you a link. Thank you again for listening.